how we transform our minerals into lithium batteries, our minerals into industrialization, and not only exporting dust and rocks. So it is my really humble, very pleasure to be here together, and I can recognize my sister, the former DCP of African Union, my sister Monique, who is always pushing for economic empowerment of women and financial inclusion. Because again, financial inclusion is huge, and access to credit. It is very important that when a project in the African continent that is women-led or youth-led, we have finance for it. Going to conventional banks, they will ask for collaterals, they will ask for all the conventional items that are not able. We don't really finance our ideas. So youth entrepreneurs of the continent, the startups, they have a lot of great ideas. Many of them could be the African unicorns. We have a program for that, but big multinational companies come and take the ideas of our youth. So how can we really preserve those ideas on the continent? How we are able to preserve our wealth of the continent? And for getting investment from outside the continent, we are happy to receive investment, but this investment should be geared toward a win-win situation. Should be geared towards creation of jobs, transfer of technology, industrialization, value addition, and not only about coming and exporting raw materials. So Africa Prosperity Dialogue is a very important platform to see how we come together. And now or today also we'll be having the Africa Trade Torch, which is lighting the Africa Trade Torch on Africa Day, which is 20 January, that started the trade under ACFTA. So we'll be happy to share with you, sharing the Africa Trade Torch, and make sure that we have economic empowerment of our African continent. Why? To have financial independence, because financial independence gives us our power of choice and voice. Thank you very much.
Oh, come on, we can do better than that. For Dr. Amani Asfor, President of the Africa Business Council, we are so grateful to the Council for the strategic leadership in the private sector. If ideas are the currency of the future, then partnerships will be the engine that drive those ideas. So for the next 3 speeches, we're going to hear from 3 critical partners. We'd like to start off by inviting the CEO of the Telecel Group, and I'm going to invite him to use that stage, that side of the stage, because he has an automatic 5-minute time slot. So as soon as it's 4 minutes, 59 seconds, your sound goes off. So, well, let's put our hands together for the partners first. We have many partners who have supported. Let's put our hands together for all the partners. The Telecel Group, the KGL Group, Badea. But we welcome Mr. Damush to bring us greetings from the Telecel Group. Thank you very much, sir.
I had a 1-hour speech, so I'll see what I can do. Good morning. Distinguished leaders, innovators, and partners, all protocols observed. Africa has always been rich. Rich in land, rich in minerals, and rich in talents. Yet resources alone are like seeds kept in a jar, full of potential, but dormant until knowledge and brains turns them into solutions that transform lives. In today's era of artificial intelligence and digital acceleration, knowledge is no longer confined into classrooms. It is skills, connectivity, it's smart regulations all working together. And when these 3 meet, prosperity follows. Prosperity fuels growth, and growth enables scale. Through ventures like the Africa Prosperity Dialogue, a real opportunity for the African Continental Free Trade Area, an initiative that would be moving from fragmented markets toward a single market of 1.4 billion people. But this is no longer only about moving goods across borders. It's about building a digital single market, one where cross-border payments, e-commerce, data-driven trade determine who can grow, who can compete, and who can scale. Imagine a young woman in Kampala producing natural skincare. With digital platforms and simplified trade regulations, she can sell to Lagos, Nairobi, or Kigali without ever opening a physical shop. She doesn't need size to scale. She needs connection to scale. And here's a powerful, lesser-known truth. Women-led businesses are 17% more likely to adopt digital tools when cross-border trade barriers fall. Because in Africa, women account for nearly 70% of informal cross-border traders. So connectivity isn't just an economic tool, it's an equalizer. On the other hand, SMEs are over 90% of Africa's businesses. Youth make up more than 60% of our population. Yet too often, they are treated as beneficiaries rather than builders. Africa's single market must be shaped not only by boardrooms, by traders, creators, and innovators at the grassroots. At Telecel, we are a telecommunication group that serves millions of customers across the continent, advancing one of the most meaningful dimensions of our mission, using connectivity and innovation and investment to unlock opportunity. We invest in connecting people and markets, innovate to enable cross-border payments, and deliberately build ecosystems that allow individuals and businesses to participate fully in the digital economy. Through the expansion of cross-border payment corridors for cross-border payments, we become enablers of regional integration, resilience, and inclusive economic growth. We recommend governments, regulatory bodies to ease cross-border payments to allow more trade for SMEs through mobile money. Empowering innovation through initiatives by the Telecel Foundation, like the Digital Academy and Start to Code for Education, are equipping the youth and foundational and advanced digital skills, inspiring confidence and opening pathways into STEM education and technology careers. We also support entrepreneurship at scale through Africa Startup Initiative Program, ASIP. Our startup and innovation platform enabling early stage ventures to access mentorship, technology, networks and markets and investments. ASIP success stories reflect tangible impact. Startups that have refined their products, expanded across borders, created thousands of jobs, and attracted follow-on investment, demonstrating how intentional support can translate innovation into sustainable growth. Complementing this is our Women in Business initiative, which supports women-led SMEs by providing digital tools, financial access, training, and networking through a 6-pillar ecosystem designed to empower, accelerate, and scale female entrepreneurship across the continent. Much of this work is led by remarkable women within our organization, leaders who are shaping strategy, driving inclusion, and ensuring that our investments create real, measurable outcomes. Together, these efforts reflect who we are, a group committed not only to connectivity, but to building skills, enabling trade, empowering innovation, and creating pathways for women and youth to thrive in a connected Africa. This is how connectivity, ladies and gentlemen, becomes capability, and capability becomes impact. Empowering SMEs, women and youth is not charity. It is an economic necessity. Africa's single market is not a policy. It is a promise. A promise that innovation will be rewarded, that collaboration will replace fragmentation, and that prosperity will be shared. Because digital trade is not just about goods crossing borders. Digital trade is about opportunity crossing generations. Let us help SMEs not just survive, but scale. Let women not just participate, but lead. Let youth not just imagine, but build. If we do this, Africa will not simply prosper. Africa will redefine prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mo Damush of the Telecel Group. Please put your hands together one more time. This is the Africa Prosperity Dialogue coming to you from the Gateway to Africa, Accra, Ghana. And we're hearing from our partners whose support has been invaluable in making this program a success. A big thank you to Mo Damush from the Telecel Group for connecting energies across the continent. We'd like to now hear from one of Ghana's most impressive and fastest growing companies, the KGL Group, led by Mr. Alex Dade, to bring us greetings as a partner for the Africa Prosperity Dialogues 2026. Please put your hands together for Mr. Alex Dade. Thank you, sir, for your partnership.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, Honorable Ministers of State. May I stand on all the protocols already observed. It is a privilege to join you at the African Prosperity Dialogues under the theme Empowering SMEs, Women, Youth in African Single Market. The African Continental Free Trade Area gives us the chance to move from fragmented ambition to a shared continental destiny. Here at the KGL Group of companies, we believe that Africa's future will be built by Africans who believe in Africa. AFCFTA is not simply about trade. It is about dignity, opportunity, and the freedom to shape our own economic narrative. This is a moment that calls for vision, a vision of an Africa where innovation is not imported, but homegrown, where African technology, African systems, and African solutions power African markets. Innovation in Africa has never been a challenge. Our people innovate out of necessity every day. The real challenge has been converting innovation into scale. Scale can only be achieved through collaboration. Collaboration across borders, across sectors, and critically between public and private sectors. Ladies and gentlemen, vision must be matched by collaboration. AFCFTA challenges us to think about borders and beyond borders, also beyond languages and beyond old rivalries. Governments, businesses, financiers, and institutions must act not as isolated actors, but as partners in the continental project. When Africa collaborates, it multiplies its strength. When it fragments, it dilutes its power. Above all, this vision must be realized through trade. Trade that is fair, inclusive, and transformative. Trade that builds factories, not dependencies. Trade that creates jobs for Africa's youth and open doors and pathways for women and SMEs to thrive. At the KGL Group of companies, we see ourselves as part of this generational mission. We believe that good corporate citizenship and good corporate governance is anchored in good corporate governance and is critical to any successful enterprise in Africa. That is to say, wealth created through public-private partnerships should make a lasting impact in the communities we operate in. The private sector should not limit itself to PPPs to only commercial collaboration, but also be responsible corporate citizens, filling in critical social intervention gaps left uncovered by governments, not as charity, but as investment in long-term stability, trust, and shared prosperity. And that brings to a very important topic that is very close to my heart. It is, if we want to attain sustainable growth, we must deliberately create African business champions that are competitive on the global stage. History shows us that lasting economic transformation is driven by great companies that can scale beyond domestic markets, businesses that meet global standards, attract international capital, and compete on quality, governance, and execution. As a leading Ghanaian and African conglomerate, the KGL Group stands firmly with this vision. An Africa that trades with itself, an Africa that invests in itself, an Africa that also invests in its people, an Africa that defines success on its own terms, an Africa built by great African global champions of enterprise. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa does not lack entrepreneurs. Africa lacks protection of successful entrepreneurs. Across this continent, whenever an African business begins to scale, whenever it moves from survival to significance, it suddenly attracts attention. Not celebration, not partnership, attention. The systematic destabilization of African business champions once they become competitive is worrying. For us at the KGL Group, this is not theory, it is lived experience. When African-owned businesses are small, they are applauded. When they grow, they are tolerated. And when they begin to dominate, they are questioned. And when they threaten entrenched interest, they are disciplined. And that's where suddenly you see regulations change in the middle of the game. That's where you see licenses are reinterpreted. That's where you see investigations multiplied. Narrative shifts from local success. They become from local successes, they become problematic dominance. This is not market competition, ladies and gentlemen. It is economic choreography. So we allow African champions to be labeled politically exposed. Indigenous success to be framed as cronyism. Wealth creation by Africans to be treated as suspicious. Meanwhile, foreign multinationals enjoy regulatory patience, narrative protection, and policy sympathy. In the modern economy, you don't destroy a company with tanks. You do so with headlines, hashtags, consultant reports of foreign agents, so-called neutral policy advisors. Once the narrative is lost on a company, the business is already wounded. And too often, Africans are recruited knowingly or unknowingly as foot soldiers in the campaign against African enterprise. These are local proxies of global agendas. Rarely is a destabilization foreign. It's usually executed through local agents with external backing, think tanks, NGOs, or consultants pushing reforms that oddly favor foreign firms. The local media and influencers who frame African success as cronyism while foreign dominance is called investment. The tragedy is Africans are sometimes used to undermine African success. And I say that from a position having worked in the developed world that I wouldn't mention the names, but we have been privy when we go out. I lived my life about 30 years outside and worked in these countries. And the economic intelligence units set up to brief us, companies based in these countries, on what goes on in these African countries, who the competitors are, which big businesses to tackle. So this is realistic. This is real economic, I would say, sovereignty fight. But still, we have, however, seen successful African businesses that began locally and grew into regional and global players. Companies like MTN Group, which expanded from a single market to a Pan-African and global telecommunication leader. One example, like we all know, is the Dangote Group, which is also done very well on the international scale. But their successes did not come from protection or isolation, but from discipline, strong institutional support, and the courage to compete internationally. Distinguished guests, building global business champions such as the KGL Group, MTN, and the lot. It's not about leaving Africa behind. It is about taking Africa with us. Local champions are not just wealthy individuals. They are economic shock absorbers. They are the anchors of supply chains, the investors in research and development, and the patient capital that foreign direct investment is not. Distinguished guests, all supply chains are breaking. New alliances are being formed. Africa's greatest advantage is not just its resources or its demographics. It is the choices we make now and the African business champions who lead this transformation. AFCFTA gives us the framework to turn these assets into enduring prosperity. Prosperity built by these great African leaders who choose cooperation over fragmentation, predictability over expediency, and long-term value over short-term comfort. And in Africa's capacity to lead, to trade, and to prosper. An Africa that invests in its people, an Africa that defines success on its own terms. The task before us is simple, but not easy. To rise together, grow together, and achieve as one people. This is our clarion call. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
And thank you very much, Alex Dade, for your speech and also for your support. Let's do it better for him. We're very privileged to have in this round as well to bring us a speech the Secretary General of the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa, Badia, one of the 100 most influential women of African descent. Help me welcome Dr. Fatima El Sheikh to bring us a message. It's a long walk, please.
Excellencies, distinguished officials, leaders of the private sector, fellow sisters, African women, and the youth in the room, all protocol observed. I'm not going to go through the official protocols, not to miss anyone. It is a great honor for the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa, known for abbreviation BADIA, to participate in the Africa Prosperity Dialogue for this year, an important platform that brings together vision, policy, and action in service of Africa for a shared economic future that we own rather than we are positioned in. The theme of this dialogue, empowering SMEs, women and youth in Africa in a single market, innovate, collaborate, trade, speaks directly to the engine of Africa economic growth and transformation. Small and medium-sized enterprises are the backbone of Africa economies. Women and youth are not the only the majority of the continent population, but they are the continent's greatest asset as a source of creativity, resilience, and ambition. Yet, despite their proven potential, many of the SMEs in the continent, particularly those led by women and young entrepreneurs, come to face a real challenge. The structural barriers, including limited access to finance, restricted market access, gaps in skill, and weak integration into regional and continental value chains. The African Continental Free Trade Area, for which Ghana is the home, and Badia is a genuine and committed partner to see the reality, provides a historic opportunity to change the reality of Africa by creating a single market of over 1.4 billion people. The agreement provides an unlocked scale for stimulation of innovation and to enable African enterprises to compete. First within Africa, and then hopefully globally, and hopefully globally even before within the continent. It is an unmatched opportunity, but it requires a bold policy statement from all the African countries. Most importantly, we need to make sure that the people are at the center of the agreement itself. Allow me at this to reiterate that Badia remains to be committed and clear in enduring the agreement. For decades, we've partnered with African countries and African agencies and African banks and IFIs and fellow MDPs on technical assistance, capacity building and financing of development in the continent. Today, we are deepening our focus on small and medium enterprises and private sector-led growth. In fact, our partnership in Ghana is actually marked under the 24-hour economy initiative, working through IFIs and local banks towards cascading and pushing through finance towards the SMEs, and particularly with a special focus on youth and women-led businesses. We believe that innovation must be encouraged not only in technology, but also in different business models and in different financing instruments. We believe in multiplying our $1 that comes out from Badia through working in partnership with private sector and banks, between governments and private sector, between Africa and development partners. And we believe that trade must be made accessible by reducing the trade barriers and improving logistics. Empowering women and youth is not only a social objective alone, it is an economic imperative. When women-led enterprises thrive, community prosper. When women entrepreneurs succeed, hope is converted into an opportunity, and an opportunity for a lasting growth. Allow me to use this platform to reiterate a call that I made personally on the panel on day one about women empowerment. I think we have been in the journey of, I would say, African women equity and particularly global women equity for the last 25 years. And I would say that one of the issues that we face is that we are always provided with lip services as women. So I'll use the advantage of the fact that I sit in one of the boardrooms in one of the development bank to do a special call for one of the African countries to own an initiative that I think will bring transformation and change. We have here in this room some of the most bold African women entrepreneurs. However, I would like to urge at least one of the African countries to provide and demonstrate a decisive leadership by introducing a serious, measurable, and a time-bound tax incentive. A tax incentive that targets women-led businesses. And with all respect to male-dominated business environment, I think this is a well-due call. I think when we have a tax incentive that talks about not SMEs only, but talks about serious women entrepreneurs that are trying to break even in the African sphere. This is how we show as a continent that there is a global leadership for women economic parity. When a country is deliberately rewarding women who build businesses, create jobs, and trade across the border, it does more than advance inclusion. It reshapes its economic trajectory. Women-owned enterprises reinvest disproportionately in families, and we all recognize this, and in communities, and in productivity. Supporting them is not a concession, it is a strategic economic shift and a choice that has to be made. And I am pleased that it's not only Ghana, the home of the dialogue, but there are many policy makers here, and we have also the African Union represented. So it's a call for a country to be a champion for a tax incentive for women-led businesses. I would reiterate this, and I hope it will be something that I realize at the end of the journey. I'll stop for a second just to allow the dignitaries to walk. Please. I just stopped for you. Yeah, please.
We acknowledge the entry of the Vice President of the Republic of Gabon, Excellency Barrow Chambier Alexandre. You are welcome, sir. Accompanied by the Chief of Staff of Ghana, Mr. Julius Debra. Also acknowledge the presence of the First Lady of Angola, Her Excellency Ana Diaz Lorenzo, the Majority Leader of Ghana's Parliament, Honorable Mahama Yariga, the Deputy Minority Leader of Ghana's Parliament, the Honorable Patricia Piejay, and other distinguished excellencies. You are all welcome. Thank you very much. Madam El Sheikh, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Excellencies. All protocol observed. A good morning to all of you. I think I am almost done with my speech, but I wanted to reiterate my call since I have policymakers from critical countries that present a strong economic power, but I also have a first lady in the room, and I think she was there when I launched the call 2 days ago. I think this is a clear commitment for African women leadership and dedication, and thank you so much for staying with us for 3 days of the dialogue. I'm proud as a fellow African woman to have you in the room, but through you and through the Chief of Staff and the policymakers in Ghana and His Excellency the Vice President, allow me to call for a tax incentive for women-led businesses. I think if we are able to show a demonstrative effect, it doesn't matter if it's 1%, if it's less than 0.5%, if it's 2%. If we're giving it to the foreign investor, let's make sure that we give it to African women so that they are able to be at the front seat. Let's give it to our ladies, and I think we have you in the room, and I would want to see that. I think I spent 25 years as a woman champion. I don't want to be acknowledged by the world as one of the most influential African descent women. I'd rather have something that I leave behind for the next generation to come. And I thank you, and I leave it in your safe hand.
This is the Africa Prosperity Dialogues 2026. Are we happy to be here? Put your hands together for yourselves. Coming to you from Accra, Ghana. We just heard a speech from the Secretary General of Badea, Dr. Fatima El Sheikh, not to be confused with the 19th century Indian educator, Fatima Sheikh. Walking in the same footsteps, we guess. We're so grateful to you for your sterling leadership. Let's put our hands together one more time for Dr. Fatima El Sheikh for that wonderful speech. We'd like to now bring up stage the Commissioner of the African Union Commission, Her Excellency Ambassador Amachum, to bring us her speech. Please put your hands together. Welcome back home. We're so proud of what you're doing for the continent. It's a long walk to freedom. Please let the applause continue. Let the applause continue. Thank you very much, madam.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, Vice President of Gabon, Your Excellency, First Lady of Angola, Your Excellency, Chief of Staff, honorable members of Parliament, distinguished partners, leaders of business, civil society, women and youth, ladies and gentlemen. I am pleased to express strong support for the launch of the Make Africa Borderless Now campaign, an initiative that directly advances the African Union's integration agenda and the aspirations of Agenda 2063. Free Movement of Persons Protocol is a flagship project of Agenda 2063, Aspiration 2, which aims at building an integrated continent driven by its citizens. Its value lies not in its vision alone, but in its effective implementation. Free movement is the political and practical foundation upon which continental integration, inclusive growth, and shared prosperity must rest. Before we speak about trade, before we speak about markets, before we speak about prosperity, let us speak first about freedom. Because the simple truth is this: a continent cannot trade freely if its people cannot move freely. Today, Africa stands closer than ever to becoming a single market of over 1.4 billion people. Yet, the greatest distance on this continent is not measured in kilometers. It is measured in restrictions. Restrictions that slow entrepreneurs. Restrictions that silence opportunity. Restrictions that make Africans feel foreign in Africa. But let us remind ourselves of something fundamental. Africa was never meant to be a continent of borders. It was destined to be a continent of movement. And that is why the launch of the Make Africa Borderless Now campaign is not merely timely, it is historic. And indeed, it makes my work easier for me. Free movement is not a conscience. It is a foundation of continental prosperity. And the time has come for all member states of the African Union, 55 in number, to ratify the protocol, not gradually, not cautiously, but decisively. From the perspective of the African Union Commission, the Free Movement Protocol is not simply a migration instrument. It is an economic accelerator, an integration enabler, a competitiveness strategy. When Africans move, ideas move. When ideas move, economies grow. Sadly, we are not moving on this continent. The greatest barrier to Africa's integration today is not geography, it is restriction. We have built a continental trade architecture through the African Continental Free Trade Area. But trade does not happen in theory. Goods do not cross borders alone. People carry them. Services do not scale without skills. Investment does not flow without mobility. A single market without free movement is a marketplace with locked doors. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Africa's women are the backbone of cross-border trade, yet too many operate under uncertainty, vulnerability, and unnecessary risk. A borderless Africa means safer journeys, formalized enterprises, expanded markets, and increased incomes. When we remove barriers for women, we remove barriers to Africa's growth. Free movement is therefore not only an economic priority, it is a gender equity imperative. Africa is the youngest continent on earth, and we are always so happy to hear that. But talent confined is talent wasted. Free movement allows young Africans to access skills, compete in wider labor markets, build regional enterprises, and drive innovation. Instead of risking dangerous journeys beyond our shores, our youth must find opportunity in Africa. The future of African youth is nowhere else. It is here in a connected Africa. SMEs are the heartbeat of African economies, yet too many remain trapped within national markets, too small to support scale. Free movement transforms possibility into expansion. Without mobility, the promise of AfCFTA remains incomplete. And if African businesses are to compete globally, we must first allow them to operate continentally. The African Union has provided the blueprint. What we require now is not more vision, and certainly not only the ratification of the protocol, but its domestication and implementation through harmonized policies, simplified border procedures, and coordinated implementation at national and regional levels. A borderless Africa is not optional. It is essential. And our integration will not be remembered for the protocols we adopt, but for the barriers we dismantle. Yes, security matters. Administrative adjustments are necessary, but history is unequivocal. Regions that open responsibly grow faster, innovate more, and prosper broadly. The choice before us is not between openness and security. It is between stagnation and progress. The Make Africa Borderless Now campaign arrives at precisely the right moment, when political momentum is rising and Africans increasingly see themselves as part of a shared destiny. But integration is not a spectator sport. It demands participation from all of us: government, private sector leaders, financial institutions, youth, women, civil society. Not a few, but all of us. A borderless Africa requires political will, and I'm happy that we have some of our political leaders here with us. It also requires coordinated action and inclusive leadership. The Make Africa Borderless Now campaign is a call to align policy with practice and aspirations with delivery. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I want all of us for a moment to envision the Africa we must build. Imagine an Africa where a young innovator in Kigali scales seamlessly into Lagos, where a woman entrepreneur in Accra trades effortlessly in Nairobi, where an SME in Addis Ababa plugs into value chains across regions. That Africa, I am sure and convinced, is within reach if we choose boldness over hesitation. When the founders of the Organization of African Unity gathered in Addis Ababa in 1963, they did not meet to preserve borders. They met to transcend them. That mission remains unfinished, and it is now the political mission of our generation. Excellencies, future Africans will ask only one question. When the moment came to unite the continent, did they protect borders or did they unlock destiny? Let history record that we chose destiny. Let it record that we understood a timeless truth. Africa's borders may define our states, but they must never limit our future. And so today, in the spirit of the founding vision, I say with conviction, the era of an isolated Africa is over. The era of a connected Africa is unstoppable. But allow me to leave you with this: the truth that must guide every decision we take from this day forward. Africa will not become borderless because it is easy. Africa will become borderless because history will demand nothing less from us. And when that history is written, as it surely will be, let it say, this was the generation that refused to pass the burden of unity to the next. We are the generation that finished the journey. I thank you. May God bless us all, and may God bless our united, borderless Africa.
Welcome to the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa, BEDIA. Established in 1974 by 18 Arab countries, members of the League of Arab States, BEDIA is a AAA-rated multilateral development bank with an authorized capital of $20 billion and a unique mandate of fostering Arab-Africa cooperation and shared prosperity. Headquartered in Khartoum, Republic of Sudan, BEDIA has proudly supported 44 African countries, committing over $13 billion and working closely with governments, development institutions, the private sector, and the local communities to achieve sustainable and inclusive growth. BEDIA's 2030 strategy is aligned with both the African Union's Agenda 2063 and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. It focuses on 4 core pillars that shape Africa's future: infrastructure investment, agricultural value chains, trade and private sector development, SMEs with a special focus on women and youth. Today, from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and building on more than 50 years of development impact, we continue to strengthen bridges between regions and deliver transformative results that open new opportunities for future generations.
Imagine a West Africa where communities thrive and economies grow. The ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, EBID, is making this vision a reality. Through strategic investments and financing, EBID is transforming lives and communities.
Ce projet nous a permis d'électrifier au moins 25 fois 2 jusqu'à 45 km de réseau dans ce quartier.
Our experts work closely with communities, governments, and businesses to create lasting impact. Join us in building a brighter future for West Africa. ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development. EBID, transforming ECOWAS communities.
From the heart of Ghana comes elegance that endures. Gold ball jewelry, craft world-class jewelry from the finest gold, diamonds, and precious minerals. Gold ball jewelry designed to celebrate your milestones, your style, your legacy. Gold ball jewelry, pure, precious, proudly Ghanaian. Visit our showroom or shop online.
Thank you very much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we move into hear some captains of industry, ministers of state, and heads of business. Starting this block, please welcome the Director for Ghana for Telecel Group, George Kwanzaa.
Distinguished heads of state, Majority Leader of Ghana Parliament, the Chief of Staff, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Good morning. It's both an honor and responsibility to stand before you at the Africa Prosperity Dialogue at a moment that may define the next chapter of our continent's history. We gathered under two powerful calls to action: the citizen-led movement to make Africa borderless now, the team empowering SMEs, women and youth in Africa singles market, innovate, collaborate, trade. These are not just words, they are blueprints for African future. Because a true borderless Africa must first be an inclusive Africa where small businesses can scale, where women entrepreneurs thrive, where young people can innovate, build, and trade freely across the continent. Africa, home to 1.5 billion people, the world's youngest population, still find it easier to trade with distant continents than with our neighbors. Goods stores at borders, capital await, talent wait, opportunity wait, and when African wait, our youth pay for the price. At Telecel Energy, we experience this reality every day. As an integrated energy company operating across the gas value chain, our mission is not just to supply gas. It is enabling industrialization, creating jobs, and empowering ambition of African business. Telecel maintains a robust portfolio exceeding 120 million scarf of natural gas supply, supporting industrial clusters, empowering over 300 megawatts of generation capacity across Nigeria. Our infrastructure demonstrates what is possible when private sector innovation aligns public objective. In Edo State, we operate 40 million scarf city gate facility supplying over 18 industries. In Ogun State, our CNG mother station commissioned 3.1 million scarf has expanded to 7.6 million scarf, boasting gas supply to the industrial southwest corridor. We are among the largest nation deployers of mobile auto gas refilling stations, fueling over 200 vehicles daily and serving more than 30 commercial off-takers, while supplying 40 million scum per day to Dangote Cement for logistics operation. To strengthen energy access, we are deploying a 10 million scarf LNG facility, a 100 megawatt gas to power project, a 5,000 barrel per day gas to liquid plant, a 20,000 per day fertilizer complex. Beyond Nigeria, last week, we commissioned and opened the first natural gas virtual pipeline in Ghana, enabling gas delivery to industrial clusters and remote users. Beyond infrastructure, our impact is measured in people. Telecel has created 3,000 direct and indirect jobs across operations. Through local hiring and community partnership, we build skills, support small businesses, and promote inclusion for women and youth, ensuring shared and sustainable growth. But energy supply, like economic integration, can be constrained by outdated barriers. Pipeline must cross borders, trucks must cross borders, investment and technology and people must cross borders. When borders slow trade, they slow energy. And when energy slows, development stalls. For companies like Telecel to expand clean energy across markets, we need harmonized regulations, streamlined customs, and the free movement of goods, capital, and people. A borderless Africa is not political theory. It is practical economics, infrastructure, logistics, and a business necessity. The AfTA has created the framework for the largest single market in the world. But a market only works when people, goods, services, capital can move freely. Without mobility, a market is just a map. A true borderless market means SMEs, manufacturers, can get affordable gas without delays. A youth-led tech firm can scale with seamless digital payment, travel, and a woman-owned business can export across multiple countries in days and not weeks. Africa has all the ingredients for prosperity, resources, youth, and a vast single market. What we need now is a political will, citizen momentum, to remove the invisible barriers limiting trade and opportunity. Government, the private sector, civil society, citizens must lead together. To CEOs, let your investment and action push integration forward. To policymakers, harmonize standards, facilitate cross-border corridors, and to the youth of Africa, your creative roam freely. Your trade must be unbounded. Your ambition must traverse borders. You are the heartbeat of a borderless Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kwanzaa. And now, ladies and gentlemen, coming up to the stage to share his remarks, are investor, Afrobeats artist, and cross-border entrepreneur. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Oluwatosin Oluwole Ajibade, otherwise known as Mr. Easy.
Excellent. Wow. I guess you know who the musician is when he puts the microphone too close to his mouth. For a minute I thought I was about to start singing. But Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure, it's an absolute pleasure to be here today at the Africa Prosperity Dialogues. I had a very, very long speech, even though I was told to give a short remark. But I can see a lot of people use the same assistant I use, which is ChatGPT and Claude. And I saw that almost all the points I wanted to speak about has already been spoken about. So I think the organizers really did a good job in putting me where they put me and saying, yes, Mr. Easy, we want you to give a remark, and that's what I'm going to do. So this is going to be the shortest remark. I've spent my career in the past 10 years collaborating across Africa, and that experience has taught me a few things, very few things that I will put into 3 things, and which is number 1, Africa's greatest constraint is not lack of talent, which we all know. At the same time, it is not lack of ambition, speaking as a young entrepreneur and creative. But the biggest problem we face is friction, and this is why this is important to me, and this is why I'm speaking today. I'm going to speak about friction for a second. In the last 10 years, I've spent 6 of those years as a singer touring the world, and 4 of those years, doing a lot of entrepreneurship. And 2 things remind me. I remember when I was 2 things. 1, I remember that in the first 6 years, on the first 2 years of me blowing up, it was easier to tour America and tour Europe than tour Africa as a singer. So whilst I had the biggest songs, those who know, whilst I had the top #1 songs in Africa, it was harder for me to tour. And I remember 2 occasions, one of me going into Kenya with my band, and even though I'd been paid to perform, I was stopped at the border. And whilst my band, which had, other nationalities, could go in, I, who was the lead artist who was paid the most money, had to wait at the border. And I remember telling the immigration, I said, well, I've been paid, so if you want to send me back home, I'm going to be on the next flight. But that speaks to the reality of the friction that is being put in place and stopping us from uniting and stopping us from being stronger and stopping us from developing. Now, in the last 4 years of my career, I've spent that as an entrepreneur, solving the problem that exists, solving this frictional issue that exists as the roadblock in making Africa borderless. And I've invested in businesses that are now live in 19 African countries, of which I'm really proud of is a company that is live in 19 African countries and processes 4 million transactions a day. 4 million transactions a day. Borders as they currently function create friction in movements, in payments, in regulation, and in the abilities of small and medium-scale enterprises to scale. This friction is felt the most by us, the youth, artists, creators, influencers, SMEs, women, and young Africans who not only want to better their lives, but contribute to the shared prosperity of our continent. But yet, Africans continue to collaborate across borders anyway, because cooperation to Africa is not new, it's natural. African cross-border collaboration in economics has started pre-colonialism and has continued even today. And I stand to tell you today that the young people under the age of 35, we actually don't care about borders. And we do this via collaboration, via the internet, via cross-border collaboration in business and in creativity. The idea of borderless Africa began as Pan-African philosophy, but today through regional blocs and the AFCFTA, it has become an economic necessity and an emerging reality. Much of the vision already exists. The treaties have been signed. The frameworks are in place. What remains is the important work of implementation. So when we speak about making Africa borderless, we are not speaking about removing nations or weakening sovereignty. No, we are speaking of enabling the commitments already made and allowing people to move, trade, and build within Africa more efficiently, securely, and lawfully. A more connected Africa is how SMEs grow into continental champions. At least that is how my companies have grown, starting from one African country to existing in 19 countries and counting. It is how women and youth fully participate in the single market, and it is how Africa strengthens its collective competitiveness in the global economy. Now more than ever, if we look around the world, we will see that it is important for us as Africans to become united, not just in ideology, not just in business, but in action. We must remove every friction that exists within the confines of the law. And when Africa moves together, we do not lose strength, we multiply it. The Africa Free Continental Trade Area promises to be one of the largest, if not the largest by countries, bringing together over 3 trillion in GDP. And so I say, if we make Africa borderless, Africa becomes unstoppable. And speaking of the collaboration, today I just released a new song with a Ghanaian artist speaking about Pan-African collaboration. And I would encourage you to go out and look for the song. It's called That Way. And I leave by saying, make Africa borderless now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ajibade, otherwise known as Mr. Easy. And now, ladies and gentlemen, a few words from the Chief Executive Officer of Elgon Kenya. Please warmly welcome Dr. Bimal Kantaria.
Distinguished guests, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Bimal Kantari. I'm the Managing Director of a company called Elgon Kenya Limited, and we're the largest agro-inputs company in East Africa. And I'm going to tell you after this speech why I'm in Ghana and what I am hoping to achieve. Before I start, I did want to acknowledge the presence of my brother, my mentor, someone I looked up all my life, Professor PLO Lumumba, who's been Africa's greatest Pan-Africanist. If you listen to Professor Lumumba's speech, anybody can feel inspired to be proud to be an African. And Professor Lumumba, I think on behalf of all of us here in Africa, we want to thank you for taking the leadership and making Africa great. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to change the narrative a little bit. For the last 3 days, we've been talking about the possibilities of what this Africa Free Trade Agreement can do for your countries. Kenya ratified the Africa Free Trade Agreement in 2018. We were the very first country to take it on. Between 2022 and 2027, we came out with an Africa Free Trade policy, a strategy. Let me give you some interesting statistics, Your Excellencies. You're here in the room, but I want to tell you how successful the Africa Free Trade Agreement has been for Kenya in particular. Before 2021, our trade to Africa was only about 10%. 2023, after the strategy came into place, our numbers jumped to 20%, 19%. 2024, roughly 25% of our trade in Kenya was in Africa. And last year, 2025, although statistics aren't out, roughly 35% of Kenyan trade will be into Africa. We can always say what can be done, could be done, wish we could be doing it, but I think Kenya has said we will do it. Our numbers are shockingly impressive. Although our pie to the rest of the world, to Europe, to America has been good, the inter-Africa trade has really brought wealth to our countries. Of course, our primary partners are within the greater East African region, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Ethiopia, a little bit to Rwanda. But now we're also exporting a great deal to South Africa. I also want to tell you a little bit about the composition of what we're now exporting. Lots of African countries export raw material out of their countries. In Kenya, we export, the majority of our exports are manufactured goods. We bring in raw materials from the rest of Africa, Tanzania and Uganda, be it agriculture inputs. We process them in our factories and we re-export finished final product. So our top few products that we export are steel. We export certified car and batteries across Africa. We export Kenyan processed tea to Ghana, for instance. We are moving up the value chain. If you look at what else we export tea, palm oil, petroleum products, medicines, cement. Everything that a middle-income country should be exporting is what we are doing. They say in Uganda, if the Ugandans can grow it, Kenyans will process it. Simply because we import all of these basic raw materials, a manufacturing base has been set up to process it and then re-export it. So industrialization has become a very key part of the Kenyan agenda. We don't look at free trade we don't feel that it's hindering trade. We say free trade will bridge our partners into Africa. In 2022, 4 shillings of every 10 shillings that we exported came from the African market. Today, roughly 6 shillings is coming from our African brothers and sisters. We're now integrating throughout the Eastern African zone. So we have factories that are now collaborating between Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, cement factories. Lots of Tanzanian investors have come into Kenya to buy our steel and cement factories. So we're no longer one country. This is a key part of what the Africa Free Trade Agreement is all about. And we want to demonstrate that over the last 3 to 4 years, by being early initiators in this process, we've benefited massively of this free trade agreement. I know my friend Mr. Easy had a tough time at the Kenyan borders a few years ago. But Easy, I want to re-invite you to Kenya. In the last 6 months, we've completely opened our visa system to African brothers and sisters. You no longer need a visa to come into Kenya for the first 60 days. And if you're from the Eastern African region, 6 months we give you free. If you're in East Africa, you don't even need a work permit to come and work in our factories and institutions and companies. We want to be as open as we can. So Easy, come and launch your new single in Kenya. We'd love to have you there. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we need to change the narrative. I think for far too long we've always said we are on the back foot. I don't agree with that narrative anymore. I think my generation and the Gen Zs who are now here in the room feel pride to be African. We need to tell the rest of the world that Africa has reached. We're not going to reach, but we've reached. We have a young generation who are willing to perform. Use Kenya as an example. Come and visit us. Come and see our safaris. Come and see our game lodges. Come and see our beaches. But let's do this together, ladies and gentlemen. Let's be Africa together. Let's not be 54 or 56 separate countries. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, I promised to ask you why I was here in Ghana. It's specifically for the Africa Trade Agreement. We as a company felt, Elgin Kenya felt, that's time we expanded into West Africa. So I went to see leaders like my friend here, Alex from KGL. We've seen many, many leaders in the last couple of days through the Commonwealth Investment Forum. We've met amazing leaders in Ghana. I am so confident that as a company we will come and invest here and in Nigeria and in Togo and in Liberia, because I think the future is here. Future is Africa, future is West Africa. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dr. Bimal Kantaria. And now, ladies and gentlemen, taking you into the world of our theme, the true pulse of why we're here, we are empowering SMEs, women, and youth in Africa's single market to innovate, collaborate, and trade. Take a look.
Africa, 1.5 billion people, over 50 countries, one dream for decades. Invisible lines drawn on maps have divided us, limiting our trade, constraining our youth, and blocking the entrepreneurial spirit of our people. But something is changing. The African Continental Free Trade Area promises the world's largest single market. But a promise on paper means nothing without action on the ground. This is the story of those who will make that promise real. The innovators, the collaborators, the traders. This is the story of Africa's border breakers. The African Continental Free Trade Area is ambitious, the largest free trade zone by membership in the world. But here's the reality. Less than 20% of small and medium enterprises engage in cross-border trade. Women, who run 30% of registered businesses, face walls, blocking access to capital and markets. And our youth, 60% of Africa's population, are innovating in isolation, without the support to scale. Africa trades more with the rest of the world than with itself. SMEs, the backbone of our economy, responsible for over 80% of employment, remain locked out of the continental opportunity. The question isn't whether we can change this. The question is, how fast can we make it happen?
Enter the Africa Prosperity Dialogues 2026. Now in its fourth year, the Africa Prosperity Dialogues has evolved from a forum into action, a boardroom for the continent. Under the patronage of Ghana's president, APD 2026 brings together heads of state, business leaders, investors, and the entrepreneurs who will define Africa's future. This isn't about more conversations. This is about concrete solutions. Executive roundtables where ministers make binding commitments. Deal rooms where entrepreneurs meet the investors who will fund their expansion. Masterclasses where SMEs learn to navigate AFCFTA rules, access the Pan-African payment system, and build businesses that cross borders. The marketplace of success, where women-led enterprises from Kigali display alongside youth innovators from Accra, where products cross imaginary borders on exhibition floors before they cross real ones in commerce. Success made visible, success made replicable. And in 2026, something historic happens. The launch of the Make Africa Borderless Now campaign, a people-powered movement demanding what should already be ours. Visa-free Africa to make us move, connect, trade, and build a truly continental commercial unit and workforce. Open Africa's skies to liberate African aviation and reduce flight costs, boost tourism, and connect African cities. One African biometric passport and digital ID, a security-conscious system that enables free movement for all Africans. Implementation of the AFCFTA protocol on digital trade to harmonize e-commerce rules, digital signatures, trust services, and online business frameworks. Seamless cross-border mobile money interoperability and the Pan-African payment and settlement system. Apps to make digital payments work everywhere in Africa using your local currency. Recognize African skills across Africa where your qualifications can unlock labor mobility, innovation, and knowledge transfer across the continent. One standard, one test, one market to harmonize product standards and certifications so goods approved in one country can be sold anywhere in Africa. One African customs union to remove non-tariff barriers, digitize customs systems, and create a unified continental trade regime. Build the Africa we want through continental infrastructure corridors where all neighboring countries collaborate to invest in integrated roads, rail, ports, energy systems, digital networks, and logistics corridors that connect the entire continent through mechanisms like the $1 a day initiative. Operationalize the African Court of Justice to issue binding decisions that enforce compliance to effect the single market and protect businesses, investors, and citizens. Empower women and youth in trade by fully implementing the AU Protocol on Women and Youth in Trade. One African voice in global trade negotiations for collective bargaining power that will secure better terms, fair markets, and a stronger continental position globally. 10 million signatures, one petition to African leaders, one demand: implement the protocols that make Africa borderless, not tomorrow, now. When SMEs thrive, jobs are created. When women access markets, communities prosper. When youth innovate without borders, Africa competes with the world. This is not charity. This is not aid. This is Africa building the infrastructure, physical, financial, and regulatory, to trade with itself. Collaborate, innovate, trade. 3 words, one formula for success. The Africa Prosperity Dialogues 2026 is where that formula becomes a reality. Africa's prosperity won't be granted by others. It will be built by us. One border broken, one business scaled, one partnership forged at a time. The question is not whether Africa will rise. The question is, will you be part of making it happen? Africa Prosperity Dialogues 2026, where Africa's future is not debated, it is built.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa's economic sovereignty is in a large part dependent on her financial stability. So with this said, we take you into that sector where we hear from 3 financial institutions. We will hear from the Trade and Development Bank, from Afrexim Bank, and finally, the Alliance of African Multilateral Financial Institutions. Let's start off with the Trade and Development Bank. Here representing the president is John Esther. Please warmly welcome John Esther from the Trade and Development Bank.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Very good afternoon to you all. On behalf of Mr. Admasu Tadesse, the President and Managing Director of TDB Group, I would like to thank the Africa Prosperity Network for inviting us to participate in this dialogue. TDB Group is an African multilateral development financial institution which was established 40 years ago by the COMESA member states. Our mandate is to tackle regional financing gaps and market failures, especially those pertaining to trade and its enabling infrastructure, and to finance sustainable economic development. Our founder's vision was, of course, directly tied to the Eastern and Southern African region's regional integration agenda. As you may well know, COMESA, together with its other 7 African regional economic communities that is recognized by the African Union, were always meant to converge into one single continental initiative as foreseen by our Pan-African forefathers, including Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. At TDB, we too realized that complementarities and synergies were not confined to our eastern half, but would only be unlocked across the entire continent. Consequently, we expanded our geographical reach to cover all African sub-regions. On the western seaboard, for example, we are proud to count Ghana, Senegal amongst our member states. And through our different vehicles, we have financed activities in several other non-member countries in West Africa, such as Togo, the Gambia, and Nigeria. At TDB, we are convinced that Africa's liftoff and its ensuing prosperity hinges on economic integration, with trade, industrialization, and infrastructure as its key pillars. As advocated in the theme of these APN dialogues, we too are implementing initiatives aimed at putting the wind in the sails of MSMEs, women, and youth. Apart from directly financing MSMEs led by women and youth, we have been indirectly supporting these groups through the continent. This has been realized by financing those very financial institutions which focus on MSMEs, and in particular those actively targeting women and youth-led enterprises. We have also been deliberate in job creation. Today, our portfolio supports more than 1.3 million jobs, more than 50% of which are occupied by women. We have achieved this through mainly our concessional financing strategic business unit, the Trade and Development Fund, or TDF, which also provides concessional financing and technical assistance to improve bankability of projects, program management, and other advisory services that focus on the aforementioned priority areas. Similarly, during COVID, we formed strategic partnerships with our key stakeholders in order to provide grants to many women-led MSMEs, thereby protecting tens of thousands of jobs. Building a robust African financial institution infrastructure and architecture and the financial integration of the continent is a critical imperative. It complements and reinforces the 12 priorities identified by the Make Africa Borderless campaign. In alignment with the AFCFTA ambitions, we have been particularly active in the trade finance space, facilitating several $1 billion worth of intra-African trade transactions. A notable example of this is the importation of fertilizer from Morocco into Ethiopia using paperless blockchain technology in the true spirit of the AFCA protocol on digital trade. We have also been supporting industrialization by financing cement, agro-processing, pharmaceutical, vaccine plants, And likewise, we have been building trade, industry, enabling infrastructure by investing in energy, aviation, roads, railways, fiber optic links, and thereby creating vital cross-border trade corridors along which economic development can prosper and flourish. Today, the imperative for regional integration has never been more compelling. Globalization faces a number of headwinds, making it increasingly imprudent for African economies to solely tie their fortunes to global growth. Protectionism is surging in key economic areas, in key OECD markets, underscoring the urgent need for Africa to cultivate robust intra-continental engines of growth, along with continental sources of trade and investment. Furthermore, we are increasingly threatened with the noticeable withdrawal of key international commercial banks from Africa, amongst diminished or in some cases entirely absent appetite. This retreat increases the challenge to bridging financing gaps. Achieving meaningful regional development demands a cohesive Pan-African economic community anchored by a scaled-up Pan-African financial architecture incorporating vibrant capital markets. It is up to Pan-African focused financial development institutions to fill that void. We cannot excessively depend on external actors to champion Africa's core priorities, such as regional integration. It is us Africans who must lead the impetus to originate, spearhead the efforts required to finance our regional value chains, our own trade, and our own infrastructure. We must embrace the lead role in forging cohesive economic and financial architectures underpinned by governance frameworks that ensure sustainability, competitiveness, and inclusion. With this, I would like to once again thank the Africa Prosperity Network for organizing a comprehensive dialogue program and for launching initiatives to power Africa's engine of growth and prosperity, as well as sustainable development. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we go into our next speaker, kindly take a look at the screen.
In 2025, PAPS continued to transform cross-border payments in Africa, making trade faster, simpler, and more secure across the continent. The PAPS ecosystem, powering seamless payments across Africa. Our footprints grew stronger than ever. We expanded PAPS coverage to 20 African countries, connected 160 plus commercial banks, 15 switches, and 5 of Africa's largest fintechs, covering 4 African regions, bringing seamless payments closer to individuals, traders, SMEs, and corporates. This network represents more than numbers. It represents people, businesses, and opportunities. Today, PAPS touches a population of over 1.12 billion people, supports 600 million bank accounts, and integrates 200 million active mobile wallet accounts. And the impact? Nothing short of transformational. We've reduced transactional costs by 96%, cut processing time by 99.9%, and lowered the need for third-party currencies by up to 80%. These aren't just statistics. They're stories of businesses growing, people connecting, and economies strengthening across our continent.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you well know, PAPS is a proud offshoot of the Africa Import and Export Bank, otherwise known as Afreximbank. Ladies and gentlemen, with that said, it gives me great pleasure. Here representing the President and Chairman of Afreximbank, Mr. George Elumbi, is Gwen Mwaba.
Your Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, distinguished business leaders, leaders of regional and intercontinental institutions, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is both an honor and a privilege to address this distinguished gathering on behalf of Dr. George Alombi, President and Chairman of the Board of Directors of Afreximbank, who sends his warm greetings and unwavering support to this important dialogue and to the official launch of the Make Africa Borderless Now campaign. This gathering could not be more timely. At a moment when Africa is seeking to accelerate growth, deepen resilience, and claim its rightful place in the global economy, we are called to confront one of the most persistent constraints on our collective progress. The barriers, visible and invisible, that continue to fragment our continent. Africa is a continent of extraordinary promise. We are home to the world's youngest population, vast natural resources, vibrant entrepreneurs, and a shared ambition for prosperity. Yet, despite these advantages, intra-African trade remains low and well below its potential. And the movement of African people, goods, services, and capital across borders is still far more difficult than it should be. Today, it is often easier for an African business to trade with partners outside the continent than with a neighboring country. It is sometimes easier for a non-African passport holder to move across Africa than for an African citizen to do the same. This paradox is not merely an inconvenience, it's a structural constraint on growth, competitiveness, and inclusion. The Make Africa Borderless Now campaign challenges us to rethink borders and what this means in the African context. Let me be clear. This campaign is not about erasing sovereignty. It's not about reimagining borders as bridges rather than barriers. A borderless Africa is one where goods move efficiently from farm to factory to market across the continent. Entrepreneurs scale innovations across regions without prohibitive costs. Financial flows support trade rather than constrain it. Africans can travel, work, and invest across the continent with dignity and with ease. In short, it is an Africa where integration works in practice, not just on paper. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area has given us a historic framework. It's the largest free trade area in the world by number of countries, and it embodies the vision of a unified African market. But as we all know, agreements alone do not move trucks across borders, nor do they eliminate delays at ports, checkpoints, and payment systems. The Make Africa Borderless Now campaign is therefore a call to action, a call to translate AFCFTA commitments into measurable outcomes that citizens and businesses can feel. For African businesses, especially SMEs and women and youth-led enterprises, border frictions are not abstract policy issues. They are real costs, delays that spoil perishable goods, documentation requirements that discourage first-time exporters, currency and payment challenges that disrupt supply chains, regulatory inconsistencies that raise the cost of doing business. When borders are inefficient, African competitiveness suffers, and the promise of regional value chains remains unrealized. Ladies and gentlemen, at Afreximbank, our mandate is clear: to finance and promote intra-African and extra-African trade. But over the years, we have learned that finance alone is not enough. Trade must be accompanied by efficient payment systems, harmonized regulations, trade-enabling infrastructure, strong collaboration between governments and private sector. This is why Afreximbank has invested not only in capital, but also in systems, platforms, and partnerships that reduce friction across borders. We've invested in initiatives such as the payment system that you just viewed on the video. We've got trade facilitation programs. We support regional value chains. We also offer capacity building for customs, banks, and businesses. We all share one objective, which is to make African trade faster, cheaper, and more predictable. The Make Africa Borderless Now campaign speaks directly to this mission. Your Excellencies, history shows us that integration advances fastest when it is championed at the highest political level. The success of this campaign will depend on political will, policy coherence, accountability, and implementation. Presidential leadership sends a powerful signal to public institutions, to the private sector, and to Africa's development partners that border efficiency is not a technical detail, but a strategic priority. Equally important is the role of the private sector. Businesses are not just beneficiaries of a borderless Africa, they are the co-architects of it. We must listen to transporters navigating corridors, exporters dealing with compliance requirements, banks managing cross-border risk, digital innovators simplifying trade processes. Their experience should inform policy, and their innovation should shape the solutions. Technology offers Africa a historic opportunity to leapfrog traditional constraints. Digital customs systems, electronic certificates, interoperable payment platforms, and data-driven risk management can dramatically reduce border delays and costs. But digital transformation requires interoperability across countries, trust between institutions, investments in skills and infrastructure. A borderless Africa will be built not only with roads and ports, but also with code, data, and digital trust. Inclusion must be central. Integration must be inclusive. If a borderless Africa benefits only large corporations, then we have failed. Women traders, informal cross-border traders, small manufacturers, and young entrepreneurs must experience simpler procedures, lower costs, and greater protection. A truly borderless Africa is one where small traders cross borders safely and legally. Youth can scale startups across regions. Women-owned businesses access regional markets on fair terms. This is not just an economic imperative, it's a social one. As we launch the Make Africa Borderless Now campaign, let's be bold. Let's commit to removing unnecessary administrative barriers, harmonizing standards and procedures, investing in trade-enabling infrastructure, measuring progress transparently, and holding ourselves accountable. Let's move from dialogue to delivery, from aspiration to action. In closing, Your Excellencies and distinguished guests, Africa does not lack vision. Africa does not lack talent. Africa does not lack opportunity. We must now ensure that our borders no longer limit our potential. On behalf of Dr. Georgia Lombi and the entire Afreximbank family, I reaffirm our full support to Make Africa Borderless Now campaign and our readiness to work with governments and private sector and all partners to turn this vision into reality. Let us build an Africa where borders connect us, markets empower us, and integration works for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the Alliance of African Multilateral Financial Institutions, also known as AMFI, here represented by the Acting Executive Secretary, Babajide Sodipo, takes your turn.
Your Excellencies, distinguished leaders, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to stand on the existing protocol. It is a pleasure to join this important launch on behalf of the Alliance of African Multilateral Financial Institutions. I'm especially pleased that you've had an opportunity to hear directly from some of our members, including Afreximbank and TDB, where they have resoundingly endorsed this critical initiative. But let me also join the other speakers in commending the Africa Prosperity Network for convening this dialogue, which I think we will all agree has established itself as a credible platform for serious continental conversation.
and of course for doing so under the patronage of His Excellency, President John Dramani Mahama. This leadership does indeed matter. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, a borderless Africa is not a slogan. It is a strategic necessity. Africa's Agenda 2063 and the African Continental Free Trade Area are very clear in their ambitions. They aim towards an Africa where people, goods, services, and crucially capital can move freely across borders in support of growth, resilience, and shared prosperity. I think this point must be reiterated. We are not talking about a borderless Africa just for the sake of a borderless Africa, but it is about our shared growth, our shared resilience, and our shared prosperity. But we must be honest with ourselves. A truly borderless Africa will not be achieved simply by policy commitments. And of course, at its core, it is also a financial integration challenge. Free movement requires African capital to flow efficiently across borders. It requires liquidity, guarantees, risk-sharing instruments, and financial institutions that are able to work together, not in silos, but in coordination. This is where African multilateral financial institutions are already playing an incredibly vital role. Across the continent, they finance cross-border trade, regional infrastructure, investment corridors, and payment and settlement systems that make real integration real on the ground. When these institutions align and coordinate, their impact is multiplied. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, this is why AMFI, or the Alliance, exists. The Alliance was established to strengthen cooperation among Africa's multilateral financial institutions and to support the continental priorities, including integration, AfCFTA implementation, and other key elements of the Agenda 2063 integration and development agenda, with clear and practical financial solutions. The Alliance works closely with the African Union and its institutions to help ensure that Africa's integration agenda is underpinned by well-coordinated African financial architecture. It is in this regard that, as this initiative is launched today, AMFI welcomes the opportunity to lend its collective voice to the importance of free movement, especially the free movement of our African capital, and to reaffirm our readiness to work with partners to translate Africa's integration commitments into bankable and scalable outcomes. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a borderless Africa will not be built only by vision, but by institutions, coordination, and capital. And of course, African institutions stand ready to play their part. Thank you very much.
business in every woman. And then she works, juggling all that matters to her in seeming effortlessness. One thing is for sure, There is a business in every woman. Introducing Telecel Women in Business, our initiative to empower women-led and women-owned enterprises. Accelerate your growth with finance and investment initiatives. Extend your reach with a free business website, access to digital and physical marketplace. Be empowered through exclusive networking and thought leadership platforms. Enjoy bonus reward with our Red Loyalty and lots more. To benefit from this initiative, be a female-led business and a Telecel business customer. Visit telecel.com.gh/business to register now.
Telecel, connecting energies.
I think year 2023 was a very interesting and a very pivotal year, especially for the energy industry, not just locally and within our sub-region, but also globally. We increased our revenue and operations base by over fourfold, within the year. We are comparing from, our performance by the beginning of the year. As an energy company, we are playing across the entire value chain from the upstream all the way down to the downstream. We are proud of the agreement we just signed with the NCDMB that enables us, develop power project within Bayelsa, EMEA, and also Odopani in Calabar and EMEA in Bayelsa. And so we've made some very interesting developments, within the year. We're happy to say that, for example, in Ghana, we're the first company that was awarded a virtual pipeline license, to establish a CNG mother station and distribution system within Tema region in Ghana. We have made appreciable progress in that respect. We've executed all the relevant contracts.
Beyond Ghana, we're currently developing an LNG project in Equatorial Guinea to also be able to contribute to natural gas distribution and offtake in Equatorial Guinea. So the combination of the virtual pipeline solutions that we're doing in Nigeria plus our gas infrastructure solutions within Africa, this is something we're excited about, and we hope that a lot of these projects will become completed by 2024.
It was an amazing year for us here at Telecel Energy Group. We championed capacity development initiatives and also contributed to local content development.
Ladies and gentlemen, here to usher us into a block where we hear from our special guests of honor, our invited heads of state, and our representatives from around the continent of Africa, is a true African storyteller. Sharing a poem on lessons from history is none other than the creator of Mansa World. Please welcome a great son of the soil, Chief Moment.
To wit, if you are born to hunt elephants, do not go chasing rats, lest you get hurt and are unable to fulfill your true mission. The real wisdom behind this aphorism is simple. If you are born for greatness, do not contend with mediocrity. There is an important lesson we can all learn from history. And so journey with me through the eyes of a young cattle herd somewhere in the African savannah who leads his cattle out to the vast expanse to graze. As the animals indulge in the foliage, he sits under a tree, picks a book to read because he loves to travel through time and place to see and feel and touch a world different from his own. He stands on the desert sands and watch as the pyramids rise to defy the skyline and proclaim the glory of the pharaohs. He stands in the synods and witnesses Cicero proclaim the might of an empire as his legions embarked upon a quest for conquest. He travels with Buddha throughout India. He heard the call of Confucius in China. He listened to the parables of Jesus of Judea. He traveled with Muhammad of Arabia from Mecca to Medina. And then he witnessed King John sign the Magna Carta with a reluctant hand as his knights embarked upon the crusades. In Florence, At the height of the Renaissance, he witnessed Da Vinci paint the Mona Lisa under the patronage of the Medici. Onto the door of Wittenberg, he stood as Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses in Britannia. On stage at the Globe Theatre, he saw the genius of Master Shakespeare unravel. All the world is a stage. And then through Africa he traveled, through the ancient cities of Kush and Askum in Ethiopia, through the gold-rich empires of Ghana, Mali, Songhai, through the ivory cities of Mogadishu, Zanzibar, through the great walls of Zimbabwe. On and on he read and went and watched as the Ottomans changed Constantinople to Istanbul. He stood in awe as the Taj Mahal rose to the glory of Mumtaz Mahal. He heard the praise songs of Genghis Khan and Kublai Khan as he traveled the Silk Road along with Marco Polo before the Ming Emperors drove away the Mongols and made the great walls of China even greater. In Japan's bustling city of Kyoto, he saw the samurais with their two blades, the geishas with their alluring gaze as the actors in their kimonos danced the kabuki under the watchful eyes of the shoguns. He sailed with Columbus into the Amazons of the Azteca and the Inca before the conquistadores of Cortes and Pizarro. He witnessed the dawn of European exploration as Captain Bartolomé Dia landed on the Cape of Good Hope. He watched as the captured men came out of the door of no return into the hungry ships waiting to sail to the unforgiving world. On and on he read and went into the Industrial Revolution and sat in the first passenger train from Stockholm to Darlington, into the age of information technology as Alexander Graham Bell made the first telephone call, into the end of the Second World War and the beginning of liberation movement, Chairman Mao in China, Gandhi in India, and here in Ghana, he watched Osagyefo declare, Ghana, your beloved country is free forever. The independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked up to the total liberation of Africa. Seek ye first the political kingdom, and all others shall be added unto thee. It is because of the all others that we gather today as a people and as a continent. And throughout all of this journey in history, there is one abiding truth that we must learn. No great nation, no great empire has been great by being small. All the nations throughout the thousands of years of human history have been so because they maximized territories. The Egyptians maximized the territories of the Nile. The Romans conquered all the way from Europe to Asia into North Africa. Even the great African powers were great because they had big territories. Britain became Great Britain after it set its armada to the world. And so if history teaches us that you cannot be great unless you have a big territory, what does that tell us as Africans today? No single African country can ever be truly great and strong if we do not combine our force, our markets, and our people to dynamize the movement of our continent. And there is one final lesson that history teaches us, which may be a challenge for our generation. But that lesson is this: throughout the thousands of years of human history, no single power has ever dominated the entire regions of Africa. No single power has ever conquered North, West, South, East, and Central Africa. All power has always been regional based. Even colonial powers had to divide Africa amongst themselves. After is the single most ambitious ever plan to unite a continent and to unleash the force of 1.5 billion people. And so today I ask all of us, if you are born to hunt elephants, do not chase rats. If you are born to be great, do not chase mediocrity. Our greatness is in our strength.
Chief Mumin, a son of Africa. And on the back of that, we want to now hear from our duty bearers. We're going to start from the Parliament of Ghana. We'll hear from the Leader of the House. We'll then hear from the Chief of Staff of Ghana and end the segment with the Vice President of Gabon. We'd like to bring up stage the Member of Parliament for Boku in the Upper East region of Ghana and the Leader of Government Business in the House, the Honorable Mahama Ayariga, to bring us greetings and a message from Ghana's legislature. Please put your hands together.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me also stand on existing protocols and bring you greetings from the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana, the Right Honorable Speaker Alban Sumana Bagbin, and my colleague members of Parliament. It is a great thing that as Africans we have gathered to talk about prosperity. They say, think it and it will happen. We must develop a prosperity mindset as Africans. As for the theme of the borderless Africa, I, more than anyone, appreciates the importance of demolishing those borders. I represent a constituency, Boku Central, that used to be bordered by two countries. To the north is Burkina Faso, and to the east was the Republic of Togo. The women in my constituency attended the market day on Monday in Ghana. On Wednesday, they attended the market day in Burkina Faso, and on Friday, they will attend the market day in Togo. So long as they were concerned, there were no borders. As a young boy, I recall carrying timber on my head across to Burkina Faso in the middle of the night. We used to be called smugglers and economic saboteurs, but we thought we were Pan-Africanists sharing Ghana's resources with our neighbors. Let me conclude my brief solidarity message by endorsing the campaign for a borderless Africa. We want a visa-free Africa. I've seen how a visa-free West Africa has been enormously supportive. We want open African skies. We want one African biometric passport. Let's build the infrastructure that will enable our youth to trade digitally across borders, to have their mobile money operate across borders. Our youth want their degrees recognized across the continent. Let me end by saying that a lot of progress has been made, especially in West Africa. I know firsthand because for close to a decade, I was a member of the ECOWAS Parliament. And many of the demands that are being made here, I recall we worked on them diligently, and in West Africa, we enjoy many of those facilities. I also recall that traveling to other blocks on the continent, you will find out that at the regional levels, many of the issues we are advocating for are being enjoyed in the regions. West Africa, North Africa, East Africa, Southern Africa, Central Africa, Francophone Africa, Lusophone Africa, Arab Africa, and Anglophone Africa. I believe what is needed now is to have the various blocks to integrate those facilities that they have given to citizens in their blocks and let all Africans enjoy them, all of us at the same time. I believe the vision that informs this campaign can succeed and will succeed. Our Parliament stands ready to walk the talk. We are ready to pass all the agreements needed to grant visa-free status to every African. I can assure you that we've been doing that and we stand ready to even do more. Thank you very much. God bless Africa.
And in the Ghanaian parliament, when a speech is nice, everybody says, yeah, yeah. So make Africa borderless now. Tear down those crazy borders now. A round of applause for the leader of the majority of Ghana's parliament. For those of you who don't know our politics, if one person speaks from the NDC, you have to hear from the NPP, which is the minority party, and they are united in saying the borders must go down. To endorse that position, I'm happy to give to you the deputy minority leader in our parliament and member of parliament for Asokwa in our great Ashanti region. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome the Honorable Patricia Appiah-Jay, the deputy minority leader in Ghana's parliament, with another resounding, yeah, yeah.
Thank you very much. The chairperson of the Africa Prosperity Network, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, permit me also to stand on the existing protocol whilst I deliver my few remarks. Thank you for the honor to participate in the Africa Prosperity Dialogue 2026 and to lend my voice in support of Make Africa Borderless Now advocacy initiative. I bring warm greetings from the Minority Leader of Parliament, Osahene Alexander Afenyo-Mackey, whom I'm privileged to represent today. Though he is unable to join us in person, he asked me to assure you of his strong commitment to this campaign and his deep appreciation for the leadership of the Africa Prosperity Network in advancing this timely and important continental cause. This Make Africa Borderless Now advocacy initiative reminds us of an uncomfortable but necessary truth. Africa's challenge today is not the absence of treaties or protocols. It is the absence of full and faithful implementation. Ladies and gentlemen, across the continent, we have already agreed on the legal architecture for integration, from the Abuja Treaty to the African Continental Free Trade Area and several African Union protocols. What remains is to translate the commitments into enforceable national law and a real outcome for our people. This is where preliminary parliamentary leadership becomes indispensable. As the Deputy Minority Leader and a four-term Member of Parliament, I firmly believe that Africa's integration project will succeed or fail at the level of national legislature. Treaties do not implement themselves. Protocols do not enforce themselves. It is through parliamentary domestication, budgetary approval, and sustained oversight that continental commitments acquire legal force within one national jurisdiction. The African Continental Free Trade Area dispute settlement mechanism illustrates this point clearly. This mechanism is indispensable. Without it, asymmetries in interpretations, arbitrary barriers, and uncertainties in enforcement will undermine market confidence and deter participation by investors, traders, enterprises across the continent. A rule-based single African market can only function if its rules are credible, predictable, and enforceable. The dispute settlement mechanism is the backbone of the African Continental Free Trade Area. However, for this mechanism to operate effectively, member states must align domestic trade laws, administrative systems, and institutional practices with African Continental Free Trade Area obligations. Parliaments have a critical role to play in ensuring this alignment and in holding the executive accountable for compliance. Equally important is the long-standing but unfinished task of operationalizing the African Court of Justice as provided for Article 18 of the AU Constitutive Act. A borderless Africa must also be a law-governed Africa. Without a functioning supranational judicial authority, continental integration risks fragmentation, selective compliance, and legal uncertainty. A fully functional African Court of Justice will anchor legal certainty by providing a universal venue to justice. A fully functional African Court of Justice, will anchor legal certainty by providing a universal venue to enforce continental commitments, interpret obligations uniformly, and strengthen compliance by member states. It will also provide the legal certainty required to sustain Africa's single market and attract long-term investment. Let me emphasize, it has already been stated by our young entrepreneur, but let me emphasize this clearly. Making Africa borderless does not weaken sovereignty. Rather, it strengthens the collective sovereignty by replacing unilateralism with rules, discretion with law, and fragmentation with cooperation. The Make Africa Borderless Now campaign is therefore both timely and necessary. Its 12 priority areas are already anchored in existing African Union treaties and protocols. What is required now is political will, legislative leadership, and disciplined implementation. History will not judge the various parliaments by the number of treaties we endorse, but by whether we ensured implementation. It will judge us by whether we strengthened oversight, upheld the rule of law, and helped turn Africa's single market from promise into practice. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, parliamentary oversight in domestication and implementation, a robust Africa Continental Free Trade Area dispute resolution regime, and the establishment of the African Court of Justice are not abstract aspirations. They are essential building blocks for legal certainty, compliance, and investor confidence in our continental market. I therefore proudly affirm my solidarity and that of the minority leadership in Parliament with the Make Africa Borderless Now campaign, and we commit to supporting through parliamentary actions and oversight the domestication and effective implementation of Africa's continental legal frameworks. Africa has agreed. Africa has signed. Now Africa must implement. Thank you very much.
Patricia Appiagyei. Thank you very much. A round of applause for her. Thank you. Parliament is in session. They had to leave to express solidarity. Now that our legislature is aligned, where is our executive to represent the President of the Republic? I am happy to now give to you the Chief of Staff of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama in the person of the Honorable Julius Deborah. Please put your hands together for the Chief of Staff of His Excellency President Mahama to bring us an executive message. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Your Excellency, the Vice President of Gabon, Your Excellencies, our parliamentary leadership, members of parliament, honorable ministers of state, distinguished guests, captains of industry, investors, development partners, innovators, entrepreneurs, and the vibrant community of women and youth here present. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you special greetings from our president, who would have loved to be here, but for other reasons, he's out of the jurisdiction. Let me start with true real stories. The first one has to do with a former parliamentarian, a legislator of our country by name Honorable Ras Mubarak, and a group of young men decided to tour Africa to draw attention to the need for us to have a visa-less continent. They succeeded in visiting only 31 countries because they needed to apply 12 separate visas. In one particular country, it took them 3 months before the response to their visa was replied. And so I think using today, we need to drum home the importance of making free movement on the continent so as to encourage the wider market we are looking for. The second related issue is that when we took office in January 2025, a lot of people came to see the president and said, Mr. President, this Africa Prosperity Network series, why do you want to get involved? Simply wash your hands off, because it was started during the era of your predecessor. And I remember very well what President Mahama said. He said, and I quote him, Julius, Africa's prosperity begins when successive leaders acknowledge the good things being done by their predecessors and continue. So I bring you warm greetings from the President of our Republic, and I extend his appreciation to the Africa Prosperity Network for convening the Africa Prosperity Dialogues once again here in Ghana. It is a privilege to join you at this consequential gathering held at the moment when Africa's promise is clearer than ever and our choices are more urgent than ever. This year's theme is direct, practical and visionary, empowering SMEs, women and youth in Africa's single market, innovate, collaborate and trade. It is also a reminder that the true success of Africa's continental market will not be measured by declaration and treaties only, but by whether it's tangible to improve the lives and prospects of those who form the backbone of our economies, the small and medium enterprises, our women and the young folks. Let us speak plainly. Africa has largely put in place the architecture of integration. What remains is the harder work of translating ambition into daily economic reality. Across our continent, SMEs account for the overwhelming majority of businesses and jobs. Yet, only a small fraction participate in cross-border trade. Women entrepreneurs continue to face structural barriers to finance, markets, and technology. Our youth, innovative, ambitious, and digitally fluent, are creating solutions for Africa, but too often without the scale, capital, or market access required to enable them to thrive. If Africa's single market is to fulfill its promise, it must be inclusive by design and relentless in execution. That is why the African Prosperity Dialogue matter. This platform has evolved beyond a conference. It has become a convening space where policy meets capital, enterprises meet opportunity, and ideas are tested against implementation. It is a space where Africa's future is discussed, not in abstract, but in terms of deals, reforms, partnership, and measurable outcomes. From the perspective of the government of Ghana, our commitment to Africa's economic integration is unwavering. Ghana is proud to host the Secretariat of AFTA, and we remain determined to champion the practical reforms that make trade possible in the real world. Simplifying custom procedure, reducing non-tariff barriers, improving logistics, strengthening value chains, and investing in industrial and digital infrastructure. Here I wish to echo the words of President John Dramani Mahama, who has reminded African leaders that the African Continental Free Trade Area will not succeed on declarations alone. It must be supported by deliberate investment in infrastructure, efficient institutions, and productive capacity. His message is clear. Integration must be engineered, financed, and implemented, or it will remain an aspiration rather than a driver of prosperity. Yet, even as we pursue the practical, we must keep faith with the history. Kwame Nkrumah, our first president, warned decades ago that Africa must unite or disintegrate individually. The forces that unite us are intrinsic and greater than the superimposed influences that keep us apart. This was not rhetoric for his own sake. It was a strategic warning about scale, competitiveness, and relevance in the global economic market. Today, that call to unite must be expressed in the language of markets, jobs, and opportunities, especially for women, youth, and SMEs. Unity must mean the ability of African enterprises to trade across borders with ease, to scale beyond national market, and to compete confidently within a single continental economy. So what must we do? First, we must align finance with enterprise. Africa needs patience, development-oriented capital that understands the realities of SMEs, support innovation, and reward growth. Capital must meet credible businesses, and credible businesses must be equipped to absorb investment and scale regionally. Second, we must build trade capability at scale. Export readiness, standards of compliance, digital trade literacy, and logistics efficiency are no longer optional. They are a must. They are prerequisites for competitiveness in a continental market. Third, we must make integration visible and tangible. When women lead enterprises and youth-led startups successfully trade across borders, they create confidence and momentum. They turn continental policy into lived experience. This brings me to the launch of the Africa Market Borderless Now. Make Africa Borderless Now campaign. This is more than a call for easier movement. It is a demand for economic transformation. Africa cannot trade at a scale if its people, goods, services, and ideas remain constrained by outdated systems and unnecessary barriers. A borderless Africa is not about erasing sovereignty. It is about unlocking opportunities. As the Chief of Staff to the President, I am actually aware that implementation is where vision succeeds or fails. Policies matter only when institutions deliver. Our collective task, therefore, is to turn commitment into action at the borders, at the ports, standard authorities, payment systems, and across the full value chain of trade. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa's time is not a slogan. It is a responsibility. If we empower women and youth with real access to finance, skills, markets, and mobility, we will grow dignity alongside growth. If we scale SMEs into continental champions, we will create jobs, resiliency, and shared prosperity. If we make Africa borderless, we will unlock the full potential of over 1.5 billion citizens on a single market. Let us therefore leave this dialogue with one shared resolve: to innovate with purpose, collaborate with seriousness, and trade with confidence, until Africa's single market becomes a lived reality for all of us all. Thank you very much for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause for the Chief of Staff of the Office of the President, Honorable Julius Debra. Et maintenant, mesdames et messieurs, je vous prie d'inviter sur scène le ministre de l'économie et du suivi stratégique du Togo, mesdames et messieurs, son Excellence Badanam Patoki. Ladies and gentlemen, please warmly welcome the Minister of Economy and Strategic Monitoring of Togo, Badaman Patoki.
Excellences, Monsieur le Vice-président de la République du Ghana, Monsieur le chef de cabinet du président de la République du Ghana, du Gabon, j'allais dire, vice-président de la République du Gabon, honorables parlementaires de la République du Ghana, distingués représentants du peuple ghanéen, honorables partenaires et amis de l'Afrique, le président du Conseil, son Excellence M. Faure Essozimna Nyazimbe, dont l'engagement pour une transformation économique profonde de l'Afrique n'est plus à démontrer, aurait bien voulu être présent à cette importante rencontre, mais son agenda ne le lui a pas permis. Il m'a donc fait l'insigne honneur de le représenter et de transmettre ses chaleureuses salutations à son frère et ami, son Excellence M. John Dramani Mahama, président de la République du Ghana, et de porter à l'attention de l'assistance le message dont la teneur suit. Et je le cite: « C'est avec un réel plaisir que je m'adresse à cette auguste assemblée pour partager ma vision sur la thématique de la 4e édition des dialogues sur la prospérité en Afrique, une plateforme qui incarne une ambition partagée, celle d'une Afrique connectée, compétitive et pleinement intégrée dans les échanges commerciaux. Distingués participants, mesdames et messieurs, nous sommes réunis pour faire valoir une vision commune, celle d'un marché unique africain dynamique, inclusif et prospère, incarné par la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine. La ZLECAf représente bien plus qu'un simple accord économique. Elle concrétise notre aspiration collective de bâtir un avenir où chaque citoyen, chaque entreprise et chaque communauté est appelée à s'épanouir. Le thème retenu pour cette édition: autonomiser les PME, les femmes et les jeunes dans le marché unique africain, innover, collaborer, commercer, souligne, si besoin en était, l'importance de l'innovation et du développement du capital humain dans la réalisation des objectifs économiques ambitieux de notre continent. Je voudrais à ce stade me pencher sur nos cibles, à savoir les PME, le moteur de notre économie, les femmes entrepreneurs, et les jeunes. Mesdames et messieurs, les petites et moyennes entreprises sont l'épine dorsale de nos économies. Elles représentent en moyenne 80% de notre tissu économique et emploient des millions de personnes. Pourtant, elles font face à des défis majeurs, notamment l'accès limité au financement, les barrières commerciales et le manque de compétences numériques. La ZLECAf offre une opportunité unique de lever les obstacles en harmonisant les régulations, en facilitant les échanges transfrontaliers et en encourageant les investissements. Nous pouvons créer un environnement propice à la croissance des PME. Nous devons également soutenir leur transition vers l'économie numérique, car l'innovation est la clé de leur compétitivité sur le marché international. En ce qui concerne les femmes entrepreneurs, elles sont de véritables actrices de la croissance économique de notre continent. Innovatrices et leaders, elles jouent un rôle crucial dans la création des richesses et la réduction de la pauvreté. Pourtant, elles continuent de faire face à des inégalités persistantes, notamment en matière d'accès aux ressources et aux opportunités économiques. Là aussi, la ZLECAf doit être un levier pour l'autonomisation économique des femmes. Il urge donc de mettre en place des politiques qui favorisent leur accès au crédit, à la formation et au marché. En soutenant les entreprises dirigées par des femmes, nous renforçons non seulement leur autonomie, mais aussi la résilience de nos économies. S'agissant de la jeunesse, qui est l'avenir de notre continent, il importe de souligner que plus de 60% de la population africaine est âgée de moins de 25 ans et les jeunes représentent notre plus grande force motrice de l'économie africaine. Ils sont porteurs d'idées novatrices, de créativité et d'une énergie inépuisable. Cependant, le chômage des jeunes reste un défi majeur, freinant leur potentiel et celui de notre continent. C'est pourquoi la ZLECAf est appelée à être un catalyseur pour l'emploi des jeunes, en encourageant l'entrepreneuriat, en investissant dans l'éducation et la formation professionnelle et en créant des opportunités dans les secteurs émergents, comme les technologies vertes et l'économie numérique. Nous pouvons offrir à nos jeunes un avenir radieux, garantissant la paix et la sécurité sur notre continent. Distingués participants, mesdames et messieurs, pour transformer notre économie, nous devons agir sur 3 piliers fondamentaux. Innover. Pour nous, le développement du commerce passe par l'innovation qui doit s'appuyer sur des investissements solides, durables, visionnaires, résilients et inclusifs. C'est pourquoi le Togo a entrepris des réformes profondes pour créer un environnement propice à l'innovation. Nous ne devons plus être de simples exportateurs de matières premières. L'innovation doit nous permettre de transformer nos ressources sur place et accroître leur valeur ajoutée. C'est par la technologie, notamment la numérisation des systèmes douaniers et de paiement transfrontaliers, que nous briserons des barrières invisibles. collaborer. La collaboration entre nos États est, à mon sens, le socle de notre ambition commune de création d'un marché unique. Aucun de nos pays, aussi dynamique soit-il, ne peut prospérer en autarcie dans une économie globalisée. En unissant nos marchés, nous passerons de la fragmentation à la puissance. Collaborer, c'est transformer nos frontières de lignes de séparation en zones de connexion tout en intégrant nos chaînes de valeur régionales. Commercer. Le commerce, bien plus qu'un échange de biens et services, est un vecteur de prospérité, un catalyseur d'innovation et un pont entre les nations. Pour le Togo, il constitue un pilier stratégique majeur de notre développement. Nous devons commencer et nous devons commercer tout de suite avec nous-mêmes. Actuellement, le commerce intra-africain est trop faible pour assurer à notre continent une croissance forte et soutenue. La ZLECAf doit être l'outil qui permet à une PME nationale de livrer ses produits partout en Afrique sans obstacle bureautique et tarifaire d'un âge ancien. Mesdames et messieurs, le Togo est prêt à co-investir et à co-construire cet environnement innovant et inclusif. Investir dans le commerce au Togo, c'est investir dans la stabilité, la connectivité et l'avenir de l'Afrique tout entière. Le succès de la ZLECAf ne se mesurera pas au nombre de signatures au bas d'un traité, mais à l'amélioration de l'accès des PME au financement, au nombre d'emplois créés par nos jeunes et à l'accroissement du chiffre d'affaires de nos commerçantes et nos jeunes entrepreneurs pour plus de stabilité et de résilience de notre continent. Ensemble, passons des paroles aux actes. Faisons de ce marché unique un laboratoire de l'excellence africaine. Innover pour exister, collaborer pour être fort et commercer pour prospérer ensemble. Nous croyons en ces valeurs pour la prospérité de l'Afrique. Vive l'intégration africaine, vive la ZLECAf et vive l'Afrique. Je vous remercie.
Merci, Son Excellence. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, in a few minutes, we go to, if I may call it, a highlight of our program today, which is the launch of Make Africa Borderless Now. And the crescendo in that highlight will be a speech by PLO Lumumba, who is our celebrated lawyer and former director of Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission. For now, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to bring His Excellency to the stage to share a few words. Mesdames et messieurs, Excellences, veuillez vous lever. J'invite sur scène le vice-président du gouvernement du Gabon. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise as I invite the vice president of the government of Gabon to the stage. Mesdames et messieurs, je vous présente son Excellence Barreau Chambrier Alexandre. Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency Barreau Chambrier Alexandre.
Thank you very much. Please, you can sit. Mr. Chief of Staff of the President of Ghana, Madame First Lady of Angola, leader Madame Nkosana Dlamini-Zuma, chairperson of Africa Prosperity Network, Monsieur le ministre, chers frères, leader of Parliament, Honorable Mahama Ayariga, Deputy Minority Leader, Honorable Patricia Apia Aguier, distinguished private sector leaders, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I would like first of all say that I'm very proud to be here, to see this platform which is growing. And I would like sincerely to express my deep appreciation to a great lady who contribute to the African vision. And I was pleased to meet her today because since she was president of the AU, of the Commission of the AU, Madame Nkosana Dlamini-Zuma contribute effectively to the vision of 2063, and we have to give a tribute for that. And I would like also to pay tribute to His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, President of the Republic of Ghana, for continuing this very important platform. And I remember when he came to the Pan-African Parliament where I was, he was already pushing these ideas of a single market for Africa. So he deserved also a round of applause. So I will turn now in French, if you allow me. Permettez-moi, au nom de Son Excellence, Brice Clotaire Oligui Nguema, président de la République gabonaise, qui me fait l'honneur de le représenter, d'exprimer notre profonde gratitude aux autorités ghanéennes, au premier rang desquelles Son Excellence John Dramani Mahama, président de la République du Ghana, ainsi qu'au peuple frère ghanéen, pour l'accueil chaleureux et fraternel réservé à ma délégation depuis notre arrivée à Accra. Cette hospitalité illustre l'excellence des relations d'amitié, de solidarité et de coopération qui unissent si heureusement le Ghana et le Gabon, mais aussi l'esprit panafricain qui anime les Africa Prosperity Dialogue depuis leur création. Mesdames et messieurs, l'Afrique se trouve aujourd'hui à un carrefour décisif de sa souveraineté économique. Elle n'est plus à l'heure des diagnostics, elle est à l'heure des décisions courageuses de la mise en œuvre et des résultats mesurables. La zone de libre-échange continentale est bien plus qu'un accord commercial. Elle constitue un choix politique structurant, un projet de souveraineté collective et une promesse générationnelle faite à la jeunesse africaine. Pourtant, malgré ce potentiel historique, le commerce intra-africain ne représente qu'environ 15 à 18% des échanges totaux du continent, alors qu'il dépasse 60% en Europe et plus de 50% en Asie. Pour la CEMAC et la CEAC, les échanges intracommunautaires méritent d'être renforcés. Nous avons là un défi considérable. Depuis Accra, les Africa Prosperity Dialogue ont accompagné une montée en puissance progressive et cohérente de notre ambition collective. En 2023, il s'agissait de passer de l'ambition à l'action. En 2024, l'accent a été mis sur la nécessité de produire en Afrique et d'y ajouter de la valeur. En 2025, nous avons reconnu que les infrastructures constituaient le socle indispensable du marché unique. En 2026, nous franchissons une nouvelle étape décisive en plaçant résolument le capital humain productif africain au cœur de l'intégration. Cette trajectoire fait écho à l'avertissement visionnaire du docteur Kwame Nkrumah, qui rappelait déjà que l'Afrique doit s'unir ou périr. Aujourd'hui, cette unité ne peut plus être seulement politique. Elle doit être économique, productive et inclusive. Cette édition consacre une évidence. Un marché unique sans PME compétitive, sans femmes entrepreneurs pleinement intégrées et sans jeunesse productive resterait une architecture juridique sans réalité économique tangible. Mesdames et messieurs, les PME africaines représentent environ 80% des emplois sur le continent, mais moins de 20% d'entre elles participent aujourd'hui au commerce transfrontalier. Ce décalage n'est pas un échec entrepreneurial. Il traduit un déficit d'accès. Les barrières non tarifaires demeurent nombreuses, qu'il s'agisse de procédures douanières complexes, de normes et de certifications divergentes, de délais prolongés aux frontières ou encore de la méconnaissance des règles d'origine et des tarifs préférentiels. Pour de nombreuses PME africaines, la ZLECAf reste encore un texte juridique plutôt qu'un outil économique opérationnel. Les initiatives portées ici à Accra en 2026, notamment les espaces de mise en relation directe entre PME auditées et investisseurs et les mécanismes de négociation dédiés marquent à cet égard un tournant essentiel. Le marché unique commence à fonctionner comme un marché réel. Le second enjeu majeur de cette édition concerne la ratification et surtout l'application effective comme cela a été rappelé, du protocole de la ZLECAf relatif aux femmes et aux jeunes. Ces groupes constituent la majorité des acteurs du commerce informel transfrontalier et continuent de faire face à un accès limité au marché public, à des difficultés persistantes de financement et à des pratiques de harcèlement aux frontières. Selon les estimations disponibles, la pleine mise en œuvre de ce protocole pourrait permettre de libérer plus de 15 milliards de dollars de valeur économique aujourd'hui inexploitée. Investir dans les femmes et la jeunesse n'est donc pas un choix social, c'est un choix économique, rationnel, un choix de compétitivité, de croissance et de stabilité. L'Afrique étant le continent le plus jeune du monde, l'incapacité à transformer ce capital humain en productivité ferait basculer un atout stratégique en vulnérabilité structurelle. Mesdames et messieurs, le Gabon fait partie des pays pionniers ayant ratifié l'accord de la ZLECAf. Notre pays connaît une accélération depuis 2023 sous le leadership de notre président dans la transformation locale et développe activement aujourd'hui des chaînes de valeur autour du bois, du manganèse et du fer, avec une ambition claire, faire de ces ressources un moteur de croissance durable, inclusif et créatrice d'emplois. Pour renforcer ces chaînes de valeur, nous agissons sur plusieurs leviers à travers l'investissement dans les infrastructures de transport, d'énergie et de communication, l'adoption de technologies modernes pour améliorer la productivité, la mise en place de mécanismes de financement adaptés aux besoins des entreprises et la simplification des procédures administratives ainsi que l'amélioration du cadre réglementaire. Par sa position géographique, le Gabon aspire également à devenir une porte d'entrée majeure de l'Afrique centrale avec une façade maritime de plus de 800 km sur l'océan Atlantique, un rôle croissant dans le commerce maritime régional et une vocation affirmée de hub aérien et logistique pour la sous-région CEMAC. Notre pays entend contribuer pleinement à l'intégration régionale et continentale. Nous avons en conséquence, depuis 2025, accéléré et engagé la mise en place d'une stratégie nationale ZLECAf spécifiquement dédiée à l'accompagnement des entreprises locales, en particulier des PME, vers l'exportation intra-africaine. Cette dynamique s'inscrit dans la refondation profonde de notre modèle de développement engagé depuis l'adoption de la nouvelle Constitution. Distingués invités, you are welcome in Gabon. We are ready to offer to the youth, to the investor, to the women, we are ready to offer to you the most opportunities. We have opportunities which are important. Les PME africaines ne manquent ni d'idées ni d'audace. Elles manquent d'accès effectif au financement, au marché public, aux chaînes de valeur régionales, à la logistique et à l'intégration économique. La ZLECAf doit devenir un accélérateur de PME et non un espace réservé aux seules grandes entreprises déjà structurées. Le Gabon appelle à une ZLECAf résolument orientée vers la mise en œuvre des réformes en faveur de l'accélération des échanges. We want more trade among a stronger partnership South-South. We need to be ambitious and have a stronger continental cooperation which take into account confidence, responsibility, and outcome, results. History will not judge our intention. History will judge our capacity to transform the unique African market, which has to become a reality for our people and not to delay this promise. I thank you for your attention.
Merci beaucoup, Son Excellence. Le Gabon est prêt. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Gabon is ready. And we are also ready to move to the last part of our program, arguably the true reason and the true inspiration behind our showing up in our numbers over the last few days. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for the launch of Make Africa Borderless Now, starting off with the documentary that will highlight our 12 action points. Please take a look.
In 1884, in a distant winter in Berlin, European powers gathered around maps of a continent they did not own and partitioned Africa without a single African voice in the room. Lines were drawn, not along, but through rivers, cultures, kingdoms, trade routes, communities, and homes. Lands carved out but for European convenience of extraction, division, and control. To divide and rule, these borders were never meant for African prosperity. Yet, in 1963, when the Organization of African Unity was formed, newly independent African states, seeking peace above all else, agreed to freeze those colonial lines into law. And so began the contradiction of modern Africa. Flags without integration, sovereignty without scale, independence without unity, rendering in many material ways our independence meaningless. Today, these borders fragment our 1.5 billion person market, block movement, inflate business costs, and deny African youth the freedom and opportunity their elders dreamed of. Kwame Nkrumah warned us, Africa must unite or perish. But unity was deferred, integration slowed, treaties and protocols multiplied while implementation stalled. The gap between intention and action has never been wider. This is why the Make Africa Borderless Now campaign exists. A campaign to complete the liberation struggle, not with guns, but with connectivity, mobility, markets, and justice. A campaign that you must lead because you are African. Join this movement because you simply care about Africa. The dignity and prosperity of Africa is in its unity. Our ask is simple, a direct demand for the implementation of Africa's own treaties. The Make Africa Borderless Now campaign is built on 12 priority action points. 1. Visa-free Africa. Today, a Congolese engineer invited to Algiers waits weeks for a visa. A Ghanaian trader going to Angola requires a visa while holders of European passports do not. Students spend more time fighting consulates than learning. It is possible that tomorrow, Africans travel freely. From Dakar to Malabo to Cape Town without a single visa form. Businesses expand, families reconnect, ideas circulate at the speed of ambition. Africa must be visa-free for Africans. 2. Open Africa's skies. Today, to fly from Accra to N'Djamena, many pass through Paris. Lagos to Nairobi can cost twice more than New York to London. Tomorrow, we can have direct flights between African cities, lower fares, faster cargo, a thriving tourism and business ecosystem. Open skies shrink the continent and expand opportunity. 3. One African biometric passport and digital ID. Today, an African researcher must navigate more paperwork to enter Egypt than a young intern does entering Germany. In 2016, our leaders launched the African Union Passport for Africans. But that was where it ended. Tomorrow, a single African passport opens 55 countries. A continental digital ID connects mobility to mobile money, trade, and secure online services. The African passport is not symbolic. It is freedom made practical. 4. Implement the AFCFTA Digital Trade Protocol. Today, a Kampala e-commerce business selling to Burkina Faso battles incompatible digital rules and non-interoperable signatures. Tomorrow, one African digital marketplace. Instant access to over 1.5 billion customers. Secure data flows. Borderless remote work. Digital opportunity for millions of young Africans. 5. Mobile money interoperability and Pan-African Payments and Settlement System, PAPS. Today, a Gambian dressmaker can't receive a Durban payment without expensive foreign platforms. Tomorrow, he pays in Rand. She receives in Dalasi. Instantly. No forex, no delays. Mobile money interoperability is the heartbeat of youth entrepreneurship. 6. Recognize African skills and standards. Today, a Tanzanian nurse must retrain in Botswana. A product must be tested in multiple African countries to be sold. Manufacturers lose time and capital. Tomorrow, one skill recognized everywhere, one test valid across 55 nations. Labor mobility becomes a driver of continental prosperity. 7. One African Customs Union. The deadline for having a single customs union in Africa is 2028, but we are far from it. Today, a truck from Tema to Niamey clears customs repeatedly, losing days and money. Agricultural goods rot at borders. Investors hesitate. But with digitalization and political will, this can change. Tomorrow, one tariff, one clearance, one continental customs territory. A customs union transforms AFCFTA from theory to engine. 8. Continental infrastructure corridors. Today, 50 plus checkpoints between Lagos, Nigeria and Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire on roads that are not good. Train lines that do not even end at borders. Power grids that do not connect. Tomorrow, high-speed rail from Dakar to Nairobi. Continental expressways. Shared energy markets. A seamless digital backbone. Infrastructure is the physical foundation of unity. 9. The $1 a day African Infrastructure Fund. Today, Africa waits for foreign support to build African roads. Dream projects die on PowerPoint slides. The infrastructure funding gap is about $1 billion a year. That is about how much Africans in the diaspora send home every year to friends and family. Tomorrow, tens of millions of Africans plus sovereign funds, development financial institutions, pension funds, and the diaspora can contribute to a professionally managed fund investing in revenue-generating infrastructure that connects and integrates us, making our continent the single market we want. This is how Africa finances Africa. $1 a day can build Africa. 10. Operationalize the African Court of Justice. Today, a Malawian SME blocked at a border has nowhere continental to appeal. AFCFTA violations go unpunished. Investors fear legal uncertainty. The AU Constitutive Act says Africa needs its own court of justice. Several protocols have been passed, but there is no such supranational court. Tomorrow, a continental referee like the EU's Court of Justice ensures rules are obeyed. Goods cannot be blocked illegally. SMEs have somewhere to turn. Integration requires enforcement. 11. Empower women and youth in trade. Today, women traders face harassment and opaque rules. Youth-led SMEs cannot scale. The AU recently passed a protocol to facilitate that. It can be done. Tomorrow, safe, harmonized borders for women traders, finance, digital tools, and continental markets open to young Africans. A borderless Africa is a youth and women-led Africa. 12. One African voice in global negotiations. Today, small African states negotiate separately and lose separately on cocoa, coffee, lithium, cotton, carbon credits, digital taxes. Tomorrow, Africa negotiates like the EU. One market, one voice, one power. Unity becomes leverage. Africa has all the treaties, the frameworks, all the protocols. What Africa lacks is implementation. What Africa needs is courage. This campaign, Make Africa Borderless Now, is how the African people step into the arena. It is how we accelerate the AFCFTA, how we meet the 2028 Abuja deadline, how we finish the liberation struggle. With mobility, markets, digital integration, infrastructure, justice, and unity. Add your voice. Sign the manifesto. Sign the petition. Join the movement. Make Africa borderless now.
sign the petition. Make Africa borderless now. Tell your neighbor, make Africa borderless now. Come to think of it, did we need 19 speeches to get here? This explains everything, right? Next year we'll just do this and we'll just sign and we'll go home. Is that a good idea? Let's put hands together for ourselves one more time. This is the Africa Prosperity Dialogues. We are now at the last stage where we're going to launch the movement. We'll be putting up a QR code later in the program. You point your phones to it and join the 10 million signature campaign right from this room. But before we get there, I'm sure you're wondering, who was the administrator for the group? Well, the administrators were many, but the chief administrator.
How may I help you today?
We'd like to open a bank account.